Hello and welcome back to Something Z, and welcome to What If Naruto had the Three Tails Part 3. Last time on the What If, Team 7 learned how to walk on vertical surfaces, and a couple days later, Team 7 finished the Land of Waves mission after fighting Zabuza and Haku. And during the final fight, Naruto released a bit of the Three Tails' chakra, which made him transform, making him gain dense lizard-like skin and different colored eyes. And about a week later, the tuning exams began, with Team 7 and many other Gettings passing the first phase of the exam. Okay, so now that's out of the way, let's jump into the video in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we begin this what if where we last left off. So the main examiner just told the Getting that they all passed, but before they could celebrate, a window in the room broke, making glass shards shoot out everywhere. And when the Getting heard the window break, they turned their heads. And when they did, they saw a woman who told them that she was their next main examiner. And she told them that the next phase will be the next day at the Forest of Death. And when she was done explaining, she jumped out of the already broken window. So now we skip to the next day, and when Anko believed that all the examinees were there, she began to explain the rules of the exam. But while she was in the middle of explaining the rules, Naruto mocked her. And when he did, she threw a kunai at his face, which he was almost able to completely avoid, with him now having a cut across his cheek. And when Anko was done explaining the rules, she and the rest of the examiners passed out one of two scrolls to every team. And when they were ready, Team 7 was released into the forest. And after around half an hour, Naruto needed to go pee, so he split off from the group. And a couple minutes later, Naruto came back to the group. But the moment Sasuke saw Naruto, he threw a kunai at him, which he was able to jump out of the way just in time. And seeing this, Sakura asked why did Sasuke do that, and in response, Sasuke told her to look at Naruto's cheek. And when she looked close enough, she realized that Naruto didn't have the cut from Anko. So seeing as he was revealed, the Naruto began to laugh, and after a couple of seconds, he got surrounded by smoke. And when the smoke was gone, the Naruto's true identity was revealed, revealing it to be an enemy shinobi from the Hidden Rain. Then the two began to fight, with Sasuke having the upper hand since he had the power of the Sharingan to help him. And after a couple of minutes, the real Naruto showed up. And when Naruto saw Sasuke fighting the Rain Shinobi, he made around 3 clones which go to help. But when the Rain Shinobi saw the group of Narutos running at him, he made a group of clones, which surrounded him, to hide the real one. And while the group was trying to attack the clones who were just dodging their attacks, the real Rain Shinobi sunk into the ground. And when he was deep enough to be hidden, he undid all the clones before anyone could figure out the truth behind the clones. And when they saw that all the Rain Shinobis were gone, they tried to scout the area to see where they went. But after a couple of minutes, they gave up. And when they did, they came up with a long password so that it would be easy to identify who was the real ones. But right after they came up with the code, a strong gust of wind appeared, which blew the three away, with Naruto getting flung the farthest, with the two somewhat in the same area, but they were still separated. And after a couple of minutes, Sasuke and Sakura were able to find each other. And when they met, Sasuke pulled out a kunai and he asked for the password. And when Sakura gave the password correctly, he put the kunai down. And they began to think of a plan for when Naruto came back. And after a couple of minutes, Naruto appeared on top of a tree branch above them. And when he jumped down to face them, Sasuke asked for the password. And in response, Naruto gave the password without any problems. And seeing this, Sasuke threw the kunai he was holding at Naruto. And in response, the Naruto jumped out of the way of the attack. Then the Naruto asked how did Sasuke know that he was a fake. And in response, Sasuke told him that Naruto would be too stupid to remember the code, so he must be a fake. And seeing that he was revealed, the Naruto got engulfed in smoke. And when the smoke was gone, the Naruto's identity was revealed, revealing it to be a shinobi from the hidden grass. So now we jump to the real Naruto. And when Naruto landed after getting blown away, he was in a daze since he hit his head many times. And while Naruto was dazed, a snake slithered behind him, and he got eaten and swallowed whole. And by the time he was able to figure out what was going on, he was being digested. And seeing this, Naruto began to make shadow clone after shadow clone until the snake got filled too much and exploded, releasing Naruto. And when Naruto was free, he undid all the clones and he began to run back to his team without using the Three Tails chakra, because he wants to save it for emergencies. So now we jump back to Sasuke, Sakura, and Schwar. And after some fighting, Schwar put up his hand, which made Sasuke stop. And when he stopped, Schwar pulled out a scroll from his bag and he put it into his mouth. And before Sasuke could question what he was doing, Schwar swallowed the scroll whole, which confused both Sasuke and Sakura. Then Schwar told them that the only way for them to get the scroll was by killing him, and vice versa. Then Schwar showed a vision to the both of them where they both got hit in the head with a kunai, instantly killing them. And when the vision ended, the two were paralyzed with fear. And after a couple of minutes, Schwar pulled out 2 kunais and he threw them at the two Gettings' heads. But before the kunais could hit, Sasuke was able to grab a kunai from his bag and he was able to stab himself in the leg with it. And by focusing on the pain, he forgot about his fear, and he was able to move again. So then Sasuke pushed him and Sakura out of the way, and they were barely able to avoid them with the kunai sticking to the trees behind them. But then before Schwar could do anything else, Sasuke scooped up Sakura and he ran away, into the trees. But after a couple of minutes of running, Sasuke could tell that no matter how hard he tried, he wouldn't be able to escape. So Sasuke then put Sakura down onto a branch and he waited. And after a couple of seconds, Schwar appeared from the shadows of a tree, and he was riding on top of a giant snake. And when Sasuke and Schwar got face to face, Sasuke pulled out the scroll he had, and he began to try to make a deal with him, which was if they give him their scroll, he will have to leave them alone. But before the deal could be finalized, Naruto was finally able to make it back to the group. And when he got close enough, he was able to hear the deal Sasuke was proposing. And when Sasuke was done saying his part of the deal, they heard yelling from the trees above. And when they turned their heads to see where the sound came from, they saw Naruto, who was shouting asking why Sasuke had given given up so easily. And when he was done ranting, Naruto jumped from the branch he was on and he landed in front of Sasuke. And when he landed, he grabbed the scroll that was in Sasuke's hand and he put it into his bag. Then he ran towards the snake and he began to fight using his water bullet, but they didn't really do that much. So seeing this, Naruto made multiple clones which did the same thing, but after a couple of minutes, Schwarr and the snake were able to wipe out all the Naruto clones, and the real Naruto was currently standing in between the jaw of the giant snake, about to be eaten. But while he was stuck, Naruto decided that he needed to go all out, so he began to draw out some of the three tails of chakra, and after a couple of seconds, Naruto began to change, with his skin changing color and getting harder, and his eyes changing colors. And once his spikes were done forming, Naruto began to move, with his first action being lifting the snake's snout, which gave him enough time to escape. And when Naruto landed back onto the nearby branch, Naruto made around 3 clones, which began to barrage the snake with water bullets. And after a minute of this, the snake was drenched, and it was injured, but it was far from defeated. And the snake was able to destroy some of the clones, so only 1 clone and the original Naruto was left. So the Naruto then stopped firing the water bullets, and they ran at the snake, and they began to punch it, with each couple of punches launching the snake down a layer in the trees. But while they were hitting the snake, Schwarr was able to throw a kunai at the Naruto clone, destroying it. And seeing this, Naruto stopped. And when he stopped, the snake finally landed without immediately going down another layer. And when it opened its eyes, it was eye level to Sasuke. And seeing Sasuke, it lunged at him. But before the snake was able to bite him, Naruto appeared in front of Sasuke and he held back the snake using the power of the 3 tails. And once Naruto was able to drag the snake away from Sasuke, the two began to fight again. But after some time, Naruto, from his lack of experience of using the tail piece of chakra, began to lose his form quickly. And using this to the snake's advantage, the snake was able to wrap Naruto in his tail, in a way so he couldn't move. Then the snake brought Naruto closer and closer to Schwarr. And when he got into arm's length of Schwarr, Schwarr put another seal on Naruto, which locked away the 3 tails of chakra. And in the process of getting the 3 tails locked away, Naruto passed out. And when Naruto was passed out, Schwarr saw no more use for Naruto, so he threw him away, making him begin to fall from a height that would have killed him. But before he fell too far, Sakura threw a kunai which caught into his clothing, sticking him to a nearby tree. Then Sakura shouted for Sasuke to do something, since he hadn't done anything except watch since the fight began. And after some talking, Sasuke got filled with determination, and he began to fight Schwarr. And after some time, he used the dragon fire technique, which hit Schwarr head on, and that made Sasuke believe that he had incinerated him. But when the smoke was gone, Sasuke and Sakura were able to see Schwarr standing tall as if nothing happened. But when they were able to see him clearly, they were able to see that Schwarr's face was almost completely melted off. But where Schwarr's face was melted the most, it revealed another face, revealing it to be Orochimaru. And seeing as he must go now, Orochimaru extends his neck, and he bites Sasuke in the shoulder. And when Orochimaru lets go, the place he bit now has a weird mark, so Sasuke now has a curse mark. Then Orochimaru went to leave, but before he left, he wishes Sasuke luck on the exams. Then in a blink of an eye, Orochimaru disappears, and a couple minutes after Orochimaru leaves, Sasuke passed out since gaining the curse mark drained a lot of his chakra, and that left Sakura to go get both of her unconscious teammates. And after some time, Sakura was able to find a place to hide herself and her teammates, and when they were secured, she placed traps around the area they were hiding in, and when she was done placing traps, she healed them up the best she could. But after some time, Team Dosu appear, and when they noticed Sakura, they broke through all the traps she placed with ease, and when they were face to face, they challenged Sasuke to a fight. But since Sasuke was knocked out, it was impossible, so they then go to attack Sakura. But before any of their attacks could hit, Lee appeared from a bush, and he began to fight them. And after a couple of minutes of fighting, Lee tried to use the front lotus, but when he landed the attack, it wasn't as strong as he wanted it to be, and the drawback from the attack was too much for him to handle. So when he landed it, he was unable to move for a period of time afterward. And taking advantage of this, Team Dosu attacks Lee until he gets knocked unconscious. Then they go to attack Sakura again, and after some fighting, Sakura gets defeated, and she gets her hair grabbed by Kin, who starts to insult her, telling her she's weak. And eventually, seeing this as their only way out, Sakura grabbed a kunai from her bag, and she cut the hair Kin was holding, releasing her. And the first thing she did after getting free was attack the person who was right in front of her, which was Zaku. And after slashing him a couple of times with her kunai, she pins him to the ground. But after some time, Zaku was able to overpower her, and when he did, he began to beat up Sakura until she eventually bled from her head. But before he could do any more damage, Team 10 appears to help Sakura, and they began to fight Team Dosu. And after some time, Team Guy appears, and they help since they want to help their fallen comrade. But before the team of teams could beat Team Dosu, Sasuke woke up, with an ominous aura around him, and when Sasuke got up, Sakura was able to get a good look at him, and when she did, she was able to see that there was black markings that spread across half of his body. And when Sasuke was standing, he began to look around, and eventually he comes across Sakura, who was injured from the fight. And when he saw her, he began to ask who did this, and in response, Zaku raised his hand, and he said he did it. And once Sasuke saw this, he ran at Zaku, and he was eventually able to get behind him. And when he was behind him, he stood on Zaku's back, and he began to pull on his arms, and he was originally planning on completely ripping off Zaku's arms. But after some crying and pleading from Sakura, Sasuke stopped. and he just dislocated both of Zaku's arms. And when he was done with that, he turned his attention to Dosu. But before he could get to him, Sakura pleaded for Sasuke to stop. And after some time, the curse mark began to shrink. And when it was completely gone, Sasuke fell to the ground. And seeing this, Dosu quickly picked up his two teammates and he began to run away. And after some time, all the teams besides Team 7 left the area. And a couple hours later, Naruto finally woke up, not knowing anything about what happened when he was knocked out, thus not knowing about the curse mark. Okay, so now we skip a couple of days, and while Sasuke was looking for food, Naruto and Sakura were discussing foraging the second scroll, since they were having troubles looking for teams with the opposite scroll. And after some talking, they decided to forage the scroll, but in order to do that, they would need to open the scroll. So Naruto then began to unravel it, but before he got to actual ink, Kabuto appeared and he shouted for the two to stop, and he began to tell them that there were consequences for opening their scroll. And once Naruto rewrapped the scroll, Kabuto led the two of them to an enemy team that opened their scroll, and they were passed out on the ground, and no matter how hard the two tried, they weren't able to wake him up. And after they were done looking at the team, the three walked back to Team 7's camp. And when they got back, Sasuke got back from foraging from food, who then began to ask why there was another person at their camp. So they then took him aside and they began to explain the situation they were in, and they told him what Kabuto told them, and they began to have a discussion whether or not they should trust him or not, and whether or not they should allow him to join them, since he lost his team somewhere. And after a couple of minutes, they decided that it was okay for him to join them, and after they decided that, they began to think of a plan, which was they would wait till night to get their other scroll, because that would allow them the chance to just take the scroll, because the enemy team they take it from could be asleep, allowing them to not have to fight. So now we skip to that night, and when everything was prepared, they ran around the forest trying to find an enemy team with the other scroll. But after half an hour, they felt like they weren't going anywhere, and that they were just going in one giant circle multiple times. And when they figured this out, they stopped, and they tried to figure out a way out. But while they were talking, a group of clones of the person Sasuke fought at the beginning of the Forest of Death came out of the ground. And after some fighting, Team 7 and Kabuto figured out that the clones were not physical. So Naruto made around 50 clones, with 3 of them turning into Sasuke, Sakura, and Kabuto. And when the clones were fully formed, they began to fight the other clones. And while the clones were fighting, the originals hid under a tree. And after a couple of hours, the enemy team assumed that Team 7 was tired, so they came out of their hiding spot. And when they did, Naruto undid the clones, and the originals came out of their spot. So then the two groups began to fight. But during the fight, Naruto tried to cover himself with his 3-tailed chakra for a power-up. But when he tried, to Naruto and Matatabi's surprise, nothing happened. And during the fight, Sasuke tried to use a fireball jutsu. But when he tried to mold his chakra, he felt a pain throughout his entire body. But even with these two weakened, after around 10 minutes, Team 7 was able to win. And they were able to take the team scroll, which means that all they had to do was get to the central tower. And after a couple minutes of running, they were finally able to get there. And when they do, they split off from Kabuto, since his team was waiting there for him. And when they entered the tower, they were told to open both of the scrolls at the same time in the next room over. And when they opened the scrolls in the next room, a pool of smoke came out of the two scrolls. And when the smoke cleared, they see Iruka, who then congratulates them for making it so far. And after some talking, he tells them to go into the next room. And when they walk in, they see Team 10, 8, Guy, Dosu, and 2 of the 3 Saiyan Shinobi asleep. And the one that's awake is the one with red hair and black circles around his eyes. And that's where I'm going to leave the what if. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time on Something Z.